Welcome to Truth Bombs and Tea, where we make the very best of our life. Today, we are talking about conflict, and this is the first video in a two-part series because conflict goes hand in hand with negative emotions like resentment and even contempt. So, this first video is all about conflict and how to resolve it and also how to even avoid conflict in the first place. Because here's the thing, here's the truth bomb of the situation around conflict. Disagreements are a natural part of life because we're all individuals, but conflict is a choice. And before you rail at the screen, by the end of the video, I think you will see my perspective on it, okay? Or the perspective on it. So in this video, we're going to go through the four main relationships of our life. So our intimate relationship or romantic relationship, family relationships, friendships, and then workplace relationships. So conflict is a choice. So we will all disagree on different things because we're all individual people. But disagreements are having a difference of opinion. Conflicts are my opinion is the only opinion. Disagreements are attacking a problem. Conflicts are attacking the person. So I think, those distinguishing features, and then I'll unpack some more for you as well, shows you that, yeah, we can disagree. And sometimes, if we can't come to a resolution, we accept it and we agree to disagree, right? But conflict is highly volatile, it's highly disrespectful, and it's highly personal. All right, so let's get into it. So it's interesting to note that there's a lot of research that's been done on conflicts and how to resolve them. Okay. And studies from 2024, that's the ones that I've been looking at lately, have shown that the way to actually resolve conflicts falls into 5 behaviors. The first behavior is engage rather than avoid. So, research has shown that if you're present in the conversation rather than avoiding it, it is far more effective. So, avoidance, like just not talking about it, not wanting to listen to the other person, or pretending nothing's happening, or pushing your own needs down for the sake of peace because you're walking on eggshells, does not work. The problem remains, but what happens is the person who has to keep the peace becomes more and more angry and more resentful, and that usually ends up in people leaving and often not saying a word about it because they've got into that pattern of avoidance, or people getting sick from carrying all that unmet need and anger. Okay. Number 2, focus on understanding rather than winning. So disagreements can be that we're still open to understand. Conflicts are not. Conflicts are, I don't care. I don't want to hear your side. It's my way or the highway, right? Number 3, emotional regulation. So to know when it's productive to talk and when it's not. Okay. Or during the discussion, that if you're starting to get into an emotional state, a heightened state, that you say, you know what, like I'm really wanting to solve this problem, but right now I'm kind of triggered by some of those things. So I think maybe we take a time out and we come back together in half an hour. Okay. Number 4, clear communication that's not defensive. So talking to someone and saying, I feel like when we're constantly late to events, that it frustrates me, is far more effective and productive than you couldn't organize your way out of a paper bag and we're always late because of you. Okay, so it's the constructive language versus the defensive language. And finally, number 5, You solve problems as a team. It's collaborative. Okay. It's not on you to solve the whole issue, and it's not on them to solve the whole issue. Okay. Conflict is when we're like, we haven't done anything wrong. It's on you. So you better fix it and do as I say. Okay. So those 5 things: active engagement rather than avoiding, focusing on understanding rather than winning, emotionally regulate during heated moments, clear, non defensive communication, and collaborative problem solving are the 5 pillars to resolving conflicts or even avoiding them in the first place. So let's look at the 5 or the 4 different kinds of relationships I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Just an interesting caveat to this is that studies have also shown that the kind of personality you have will influence how many conflicts you have in your life. So, studies have found that people with a growth mindset, so that they're more open minded, they look at life as a learning experience. They are not extreme in their like, this should happen, this shouldn't happen. They're not black and white, like, you know, that's right and that's wrong, that they have a more flexible mindset. They are less likely to have any disagreements flare up into conflicts. Okay. Whereas someone with a fixed mindset, which is the extreme, the black and white, I'm right, you're wrong, or this is a good thing, that's a terrible thing, they are more likely to come into conflict in their life. Okay. Well, that kind of makes sense when you think about it. But just an interesting note that sometimes the mindset and personality of a person will determine how many conflicts they get into within their lifetime. All right, let's look at these relationships. So the first one is the romantic relationship. And this one is unique and perhaps the most important, I guess, because you spend the most time with this person generally if things work out. And the other thing that makes this so important is that it's the one relationship, hopefully, where you can be really trusting and vulnerable and open up. So it's kind of like, if you can imagine like a porcupine or an echidna. Okay, you have the armor on the outside to deal with the world, but underneath it's the soft underbelly. Okay. And that's what happens in really deep relationships, particularly romantic, but you can have friends that know you better than your family. Okay. But in terms of the romantic partnership, because we invest our emotions and we open up and become vulnerable, we can get hurt really, really easily too if we're not conscious and careful of what we're doing. Okay. So the conflicts in relationships often come about because unmet expectations expectations are unmet, I guess. We're not communicating properly, or our life goals or our values change. Okay. So here's 3 research backed strategies to help resolve conflict or possibly even avoid them in the first place. So the Gottman method. So John Gottman identified like 4 really destructive patterns. And if these patterns are present fairly consistently, the relationship is basically doomed. So these 4 patterns are constant criticism, contempt. That means like the scoffing and the haughtiness, and it's like, um, you know, you're dumb and I'm smart. It's kind of like a contempt for the actual person. Defensiveness, that means never taking responsibility for anything. And then stonewalling. So either like gaslighting somebody, deflecting blame, projecting, avoiding. Those patterns basically are a nail in the coffin of any relationship, but particularly romantic ones. So the Gottman approach shows that successful couples have these behaviors and traits. Okay. They criticize the behavior or the problem, they don't criticize the person. So instead of saying, you're an untidy slob, we say, There seems to be a lot of mess around the house at the moment. What can we do to tidy that up? You counter the contempt with respect and appreciation. So appreciate the things that they do well and say that. Okay. And if you disagree, still be respectful because they're a person. And if you're not getting these things from the relationship, that's something that you have to reflect on as well. Number 4, successful couples own up to their part rather than like projecting and deflecting. Okay. You say, my bad, I am very untidy at the moment. And it could be something like, oh, I haven't been feeling well, as you know, and work's been really kicking my butt. So, but I've let the ball drop for sure. And like I'll spend the next couple of hours tidying and then maybe we can go out for lunch, you know. And if I'm doing it again, just like tell me and we'll nip it in the bud so it doesn't become as bad next time. And avoid withdrawing and stonewalling. Okay. So we've all met those people, we're talking and we can see that the wall's just gone kadunk. Okay. So avoiding and stonewalling never work. It just makes the other person really resentful of you. And then the problem doesn't get solved anyway. Okay. The second thing for romantic partnerships is to regulate your emotions. So pick a good time to have the discussion. If you've been flat out at work, or you've got the flu, or the kids are pitching a fit, or he or she's walking out the door to go to work, that ain't a good time, right? So pick a good time first and where you're emotionally fairly stable. And during the conversation, if it starts to turn and you can feel yourself getting heightened, that's a great time to say, I'm really, really committed and interested in solving this, but I'm feeling kind of like I'm going to get mad in a minute, right? And I don't want to do that. So let's have a timeout and we'll reconvene, say, in half an hour. So emotional regulation techniques. And then the third one is called the 5-to-1 ratio. So it's making sure that you're aware of and applying the 5-to-1 rule, where it's 5 positive interactions and conversations or behaviors for every 1 negative. Okay. So of course we're going to be have a disagreement from time to time. Of course we might be a bit irritable. Of course we might feel like we don't want to do anything, or we don't want to go to the family barbecue for your partner or whatever. And we don't always have to, but so long as we are cognizant of the fact that there are 5 or more, but minimum of 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative. Okay. So there are 3 tips that you can use right now. So family relationships, these are a doozy because we didn't choose these, right? And you know, hopefully most of us have families that we love, but you know, even if you love someone, they can, you know, get on your last nerve. So family relationships are nuanced because they come with a lot of ancestry. You know, they come with a lot of relationship dynamics, expectations, rules, and agendas, right? So, here are 3 tips in order to avoid conflict or dissolve them. First of all, it's boundaries. It's funny because some people say it's my family, you know, shouldn't need boundaries. Well, in fact, because they're your family, that's a tantamount reason to have boundaries, because we have these expectations, and some would say entitlements. You know, in my 57 years around the sun, I talked to a lot of people and have experienced a lot of things. And so the number of people that say, you know, oh, I have to take my mum to the doctor. And I say, oh, okay. And, you know, they say, I've got to take an hour off work to do it. And it's like, oh, okay. And it's like, oh, well, because, you know, she thinks, why should I have to take a taxi when I've got my daughter that, you know, is working down the street? So you need to put boundaries in. It could be that, you know, your sister decides that, you know, when she comes home from a night out and she's hungry, she'll just knock on your door at, you know, 1:30 in the morning. and you're supposed to just make her a snack because that's your sister, right? These could be extreme things, but we all know that sometimes, families expect things, and it's okay at times, but when it's not okay, you need to set the boundaries. Perspective taking, right? So everybody has these roles, these funny little unspoken roles in a family. So, whether it's you're the fixer, you're the baby, you're the this, you're the that. Okay. Um, these things can lead to, yeah. So we have these different roles, and sometimes we don't look at the other person's perspective. So if you assume things about people, oh, they're the baby of the family, so they won't be able to cope, or oh, don't disturb, you know, keep the peace because we don't want to upset X or Y. So don't shine too bright, or don't do this because it'll upset mum, or whatever it is, right? So you have to keep inside the things that are important to you, or you can't stand up for yourself and say, hey, hang on a minute, like, I've got this. Just because I'm the youngest in the family doesn't mean whatever, or just because I'm the oldest in the family. If you're not allowed to have your own perspective, that's when you become distant from family members and you don't want to be around them. Okay, so take the perspective of every family member, and then piggybacking on that, have regular family meetings. Okay. It may not be with your mum and dad or whatever if you're 40 or 50 years old, but it could be with your own family as you're growing up, like your own children or your own, you know, with a sibling or something like that. So these are meetings where, everybody gets to voice concerns and are listened to, and then you work on the problem together as a family unit, not just leaving it up to one person to suck it up or walk on eggshells or something like that. Okay, friendships. So friendships are voluntary, and as a result, they kind of need a little bit more attention because, the family unit is kind of always there. The romantic partner, is with us, but friendships, are slightly different. So, in terms of friendship, they can dissolve a lot more easily if they're not attended to. And sometimes friendships need to dissolve, don't get me wrong. But here are three strategies that you can use. So, direct communication. So, because, there's no kind of formal, familiar family type structure, clear communication is really important, and address the issues quickly. And my husband and I have always taught our children, who are now, 28 and going to be 26, you teach people how to treat you. Okay. So if something comes up that infringes your boundaries or hurts you, you say so. And people are scared to do that in case they're friends, then don't become friends of theirs anymore. But I always say, if they do that because you're voicing a need, they're not your friends anyway. All right. Second one, mutual respect for differences. So it's a beautiful thing that your friend is different from you. I have beautiful friends who are different, and so I go to different places as a result. I read different things as recommendations. I eat different food. I experience different things. So respect the differences, unless, of course, they're like really go against your values. But little bits and pieces. So, if they love to eat at Mediterranean restaurants, give it a try. Okay. So respect the differences and honor them. They're fun. And then repair attempts. So repair attempts are things like when you do inevitably maybe hurt one another's feelings, repair it, make a conscious effort. If you forgot to pick up your friend to go to a wedding and they had to Uber it there, say, my bad, I'm so sorry. I was so worried about, getting mum and dad out of the house or something. I totally forgot, but that's not an excuse. How can I make it up to you? Right. So we all stuff up from occasion, but making up for it is important. So those three things for your friendships. And the last one is work relationships. So this is another one where we're forced into the situation. We all need the job and we all are working at the same place. These are people you may not necessarily ever hang out with. Okay. Some, yes, but some no. So conflicts can arise. So here are 3 things that can help in a workplace or if you're working in a team. Make sure that you identify, the needs of the people around you rather than the role. Okay. So for example, if um, your position at work is the PA to the boss, so the personal assistant, that does not mean that you have to cater to every whim of the boss after hours and up to 10 p.m. or whatever, unless that's been negotiated and that's what you want to do. But say you've got children, you need to make sure that you are saying that, you can start early, but you need to finish by 3:30 or something like that, right? So it's about identifying the needs of the people around you and your needs and being able to talk about your needs rather than, okay, well, you're the marketing executive. So, this is what you have to do. This is your job description and there's no flexibility in it. Okay. Collaborative problem solving. So you look at a problem, push it out into the middle and solve it as a team. So instead of saying, Susie never does enough files, like I do 80 of them and she only does 10, it's about pushing it into the middle and saying, how can we help Susie get, increase her file output? Okay. So focusing on problems, not on the people themselves. Okay. You can help Susie by saying, what support do you need in order to get it up to, say, 40 or something like that? But it's about focusing as a shared collaborative problem and getting Susie involved in it too. And then finally, if it's not good, if it's gone into conflict, or if it's chronic stonewalling and avoidance so that it's affecting others, you need professional mediation. So to recap, disagreements are a natural part of life because we're all individual and we all have different skill sets and opinions. But conflict is a choice. And in our romantic relationships, work relationships, family relationships, and friendships, we've just gone through different strategies and behaviors and actions where we can resolve conflict, or if we are, fairly consistent in applying them, we can avoid them altogether. Okay. And there's enough conflict in the world. We don't need to add to it as well. So the next video is all about, okay, well, if you've been through conflicts and you're resentful and you're, angry and even in some cases full of contempt, how do you begin that to dissolve the resentment? Okay. So thanks for hanging with me. If you liked something, please comment below, like the video, share it with somebody that might be going through a hard time with conflict and they need some strategies. Hit the bell notification so you see when the next video comes out. And until then, thanks for hanging with me and let's make the rest of our life the best of our life. Bye for now.